All right, so we have a new interesting Nintendo Switch 2 report to walk through, and we're going to file this in the rumor category, but it is in line with exactly what Furukawa has actually communicated to shareholders directly around what Nintendo's plan is to combat scalping and the supply chain issue around the launch of their next-gen hardware. Because lots of fans, especially with the user base that the Switch has achieved with 143 million strong and growing, are going to be ready for an upgrade after over 8 years it will have been whenever their next gen console launches, because I don't think we're going to see it launch before March of 2025. It's going to be 8 full years and counting for when those users are ready to upgrade to the next version of the Switch, and that is a massive user base. And so Nintendo is trying to get ahead of the curve and essentially not have a situation where they cannot meet consumer demand and you have these scalping prices popping up everywhere online, and that's the only way you can get a console. And we now have somebody claiming, who does have a little bit of a track record in terms of leaking some potentially accurate information, such as magnets being the way that the new Joy-Cons will connect with the console. And then we saw numerous accessory manufacturers also report the same thing, and some other tidbits of the look of the dock that also seem to line up with what some other people have heard. So the source in question so far does seem to be somewhat reliable, and they are claiming that we are potentially looking at the largest Nintendo console, maybe one of the largest gaming console launches in history, period, with the type of initial launch numbers that Nintendo is planning to commit to here. And they are saying that this is already a figure that is more or less set in stone. So we're going to unpack all of this. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we have to first kick it off by talking about the user Ninspider over on Family Boards, where they don't post frequently at all, but when they do, they're kind of in and out. They tease something and then we don't hear from them again for sometimes months at a time. And again, they were the first user that teased that magnets would be the way that Joy-Cons actually connect to this new Switch. They teased a Nintendo Direct on the same day as the MEO launch, which kind of happened, or kind of close to happening. It was technically like a day off, but it maybe there was a time zone somewhere out there that would have lined up correctly. But nobody other than PH Brazil was really saying that the end of August would hold Directs, when we always expect Nintendo to do them in September. They were kind of on the train on that. And then they also had this drawing that everybody, looks at it, makes fun of. It's actually funny that we did see a legit drawing of the Switch ahead of its launch, and it did check out, but it matches these U-shaped kickstand CAD files and renders we've seen from some leaked accessory manufacturers. And it also has a bigger dock, which does a couple things. It matches up with shipping data that we've seen that suggests that the Switch 2 is shipping with 2 fans. One would supposedly be in the console, one potentially in the dock, and you would need some additional space for that. And then Nate the Hate kind of chimed in on this, not exactly corroborating it, but saying that he had been set something similar that he had yet to be able to verify, and that it looked very similar to what this individual put out there in terms of their mock-up drawing of this console. And now you can see the following post over on our Gaming Leaks and Rumors from this same user Ninspider, which says alleged information on Switch 2's initial shipment size. They have a coded message. When decoded from base 64, it reads, the initial stock quantity has been finalized and factory will plan production accordingly. I can't disclose the exact number, but for the US market alone, it's roughly 2.5 times the volume from March 2017. Some facts about this hypothetical launch shipment for people worried about finding a Switch 2 at launch. Switch's initial shipment worldwide was 2.74 million consoles, tracking the dates of March 3rd through March 31st. Roughly 2.5 times the volume worldwide would translate to an initial shipment in the range of 6.5 to 7 million consoles for its launch period within 4 weeks. The biggest console of all time was PS5. Sony never shared a precise figure, but we know it was slightly more than the PS4's previous record of 2.1 million consoles shipped in 2 weeks. So if this is true, it would be a massive launch. So you would assume that Nintendo would probably go close to the 2.5x worldwide if they're going to do it here in the US region, but maybe that number's lower some regions, maybe it's higher in other regions. But regardless, if we're talking about anywhere above 6 million plus total consoles shipped worldwide, closer potentially even to 7 million, flooding the market all at once in the launch month of this console, scalping should in theory not be too much of a problem. And while there will be some initial sellouts at retailers, it sounds like you should be able to order one online fairly easily if that is truly the level of stock that they are going to produce here. Now, like I said, you do have to factor in just how old the Switch is and the successful user base, massive user base at that Nintendo has built out throughout this generation. And while there are some late adopters still picking up Switches during the holiday season this year, a lot of people have just been sitting on the sidelines ready to see what Nintendo's going to do with their next gen hardware, and they're going to be day one people that upgrade. There's also going to be people that would have went in and bought a regular Switch that still continues to sell millions and millions each fiscal year. They may opt to get a Switch 2 and it's backwards compatible and you have a whole host of library of games to play day one. That could be more attractive for a lot of people alongside of a new launch game like a 3D Mario game that's really going to get a lot of fans out there and picking up this console right away. Then you factor in the following and the marketing that Nintendo has created during the Switch's life cycle, and like the videos they put out on their own YouTube channel do insane views. They're not going to have a hard time spreading the word that their next gen console is launching and what date it's ready to launch at and how the pre-order process works. Like, they're going to get all the communication out to their fans. They have a Nintendo account system with all of these email addresses, over 300 million Nintendo accounts created over the course of history, a lot of that being tied to just mobile and things over the years, but nonetheless, large user base, 120 plus million active Nintendo Switch account sign-ins per calendar year. So not just people that bought a Switch once and never interact with it anymore. Nintendo has a very strong user base here, and I think they know that. And when they're doing their projections on what might the Switch 2 launch numbers look like when we've waited over 8 years to put out our next gen hardware, they know it's going to be a high number. They would also probably feel logically more confident in producing a ton of stock for this next gen hardware when they look at the success of the Switch, and they don't anticipate that going down. Not to mention they have all the mainstream appeal of things like massive movies that we've already seen the mass success of the Super Mario Bros. Movie. We know there's another sequel to that in the works, and a Legend of Zelda movie. They got theme parks opening up all over the world. So you get the idea. And even if you don't want to put any stock into this particular report, all you have to do is look at recent comments from Furukawa in investors briefings, where you can see headlines like this from VGC, where it says Nintendo says it wants to avoid Switch 2 scalping by making enough to meet demand. President Shintaro Furukawa says he doesn't think component shortages will be an issue. So if you don't have component shortages, you know you're going to have a ton of eyeballs and demand for your console right out of the gate. It would probably be wise for Nintendo to do at least a 2x production run right out of the gate for the launch of their hardware, and it's going to continue to sell throughout the year, so then they can just readjust and bring the numbers down on production or up on production if need be. I would also like to point out, like we've mentioned in previous videos, we have shipping data that shows that Nintendo is indeed getting very close already to the levels of mass manufacturing that you would need to be considered that. We don't know where exactly it's at in the process, whether it be just assembling certain components but not the entire console as a finished retail product, or if it is actually in a state where it's already being assembled as a retail product. Once that happens though, I think we're going to see images leak out pretty quick. But then we even had those recent reports that was pointed out online by users that went through Nintendo's financial investor document and realized that their work in progress inventory is at an all-time historical high. So if we haven't even heard about this thing yet, and all of these pieces are ramping up to historical highs behind the scenes, it does seem to line up with exactly what this report is suggesting, which is that Nintendo is just going to produce a mass ton of these Switch 2s out of the gate, which is great news for all of us gamers that want to upgrade sooner rather than later. I am hoping they still go for something like a first half 2025 launch before April, May, June timeframe, and then you have that wave one of early adopters that are all going to go get it, and you could restock and resupply and have accurate levels for the holiday season of that year in 2025. So let me know what you make of this report down in the comments below. Are you happy to see more and more talk suggesting that Nintendo is ramping up things with their production levels and consoles on hand for their next gen hardware? And do you think that they can largely avoid a big scalping issue, or do you think it's going to happen at a pretty high scale regardless of how many units they produce? And finally, as we get further into the year of 2024, are you feeling more or less likely that this console will indeed launch in the first half of next year, or do you think it's holiday season 2025 at the soonest? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.